Hi guys, my name is David and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be talking about a book that was recommended to me by not a booktuber. This was recommended to me by one of my colleagues at work, as he is a big reader and I'm a reader, and we were just discussing about what we were reading at the time. I'm not sure what genres he's more into. I think it's more fantasy. I know he's read all of the Witcher books. He is a big Dungeons and Dragons fan. And even though we read slightly different things and enjoy slightly different things, which in all fairness should be always the case, he was telling me about this book and he kept going on about it, about how funny it was and how entertaining it was. So I thought, okay, I'll have a look on eBay and see if I can find a copy of it really cheap and just give it a try. And that series being the Skulduggery series by Derek Landy. The first one is simply called Skulduggery Pleasant, and I found this one and I found the second one, which is called Skulduggery Pleasant, Playing with Fire. I got these both relatively cheap, and because they were so cheap I was thinking, okay, if I like them that's great, if I don't like them then it's no massive loss, but I wanted to at least give them a try. I knew that they weren't adult books, I knew that these are based on a younger audience. So I picked up the first one and I didn't expect it to be outstanding, but I enjoyed it. It really was really good. So let me just show you, that's the front, that's the spine, and that's the back. And my friend was telling me that it was about a skeleton detective that has magical abilities that solves all these different cases. And I said to him, oh yeah, just like Dresden Files, where it's a wizard going around solving mysteries and solving cases. And he has never read any of the Dresden Files, so this really had some comparisons for me with the Dresden Files series. Well, when it comes to the main character anyway. So before I get into this video, let me just say my usual things here, that this is going to be a spoiler-free video, and this is just going to be my own thoughts and feelings regarding this book. Also, before I get into it, I just want to also address that this series has been going on, I think from 2007, I could be wrong. If I am wrong, I'll put the date up on the screen when the series started. But it's been going on until the present year. So this story opens up by introducing us to our main character called Sophie Edgley, who is a standard typical teenage girl, and one day she finds that her uncle, who is a writer which writes all these weird and unusual tales, has turned up dead, and there's been discussion that he has been potentially murdered. So after the will has been read and he's been put to rest, Stephanie comes across this unique individual who is Skulduggery Pleasant, and yes, that's the name of the skeleton. Skulduggery is a living skeleton. He is nor living nor dead, he is somewhere in between. But he can feel emotions, he can feel pain, but because there are no muscles on his bones, he cannot convey human emotions through his facial expressions. So that is a kind of a conflicting communication between Stephanie and Skulduggery when there's a silent moment and she's not sure about how to read him. So after Stephanie gets attacked in her home by this vicious individual, Skulduggery rescues her. Now Skulduggery, because he is a sorcerer, he has a variety of spells that he can use at his disposal. And he can manipulate the elements, which are fire, water, air, and earth. He can outstretch his hand and he can manipulate these elements. For example, he can shoot fireballs out of his hands, which you can see on the back of the book, and also it's teased on the front as well. This is a good way of him actually fighting off enemies. He can control water, and if someone gets wet, he can actually get all the water off their body and clothes until they're bone dry. No pun intended. He can control air, which, if you think about it as a form of using the Force in Star Wars, he can outstretch his hands and he can like push and pull someone, and it's kind of like that. It's a very crude way of explaining it, but that's basically what it is. And the Earth ability is something that he says that he can only use in a form of defensive strategy. It's only used once in this book with a character that's resulted in a very, very tragic outcome. But in the inside flap, you actually see a picture of Stephanie and Skulduggery, so that's nice. And it actually says their names as well, so you can remember what the character's actually called. So Stephanie and Skulduggery team up to try to solve the case of Stephanie's murdered uncle. And it turns out that Stephanie's uncle has an artifact which the villain in this book desperately needs. So Stephanie finds it very, very unusual that she's been thrust into this unusual situation and world that she never knew existed. She also discovers from Skulduggery that obviously Skulduggery was a living, breathing human being that was tortured, and he ultimately became a living skeleton. There are loads of questions about why he is a living skeleton and why he should be alive and why he exists. We find out that Skulduggery isn't his real name, but we found out that the power of knowing someone's name gives that person the ability to control and manipulate that individual if they know their true name. So in order to protect this from happening to them, they have to make up a name which they have to go by. Now this cannot be anything that they can think up at the top of their mind in a split second. They have to really think about it, because this is going to be their only identity from now on. Yes, their name is going to be fixed on them and that name is going to be owned by them, but if they have I wouldn't say a made up name, but a name that they thought up in their minds, that it protects people from using their name against them, if that made any sense. So while Skulduggery and Stephanie are doing their investigations, they come across a unique individual that I thought was a villain when I saw his picture on the back. This guy. He is called Ghastly Bespoke, and sorry if I've mispronounced his name, but he is a tailor. Even though he does look very, very villainous in his appearance, that we find out that he was born with all these scars on his face, and that made him kind of an outcast amongst society because of the way he looks, which reminded me a lot of Frankenstein. He is a very, very fierce friend towards Skulduggery, and he's very protective over Stephanie, and he even fights with them. Now, the way that people fight in this world is not just with using the elements. They can use their fists, they can use guns or swords or whatever is at their disposal. And we also find this another character called Tanith Lowe, which is there. She is a fighter and she has a sword, and she is a really, really fierce fighter. She can jump on the walls and jump on the ceilings, kind of like the Matrix when they flip all everywhere. And even though her character was probably the weakest in this book for me personally, I would really like to see her character more fleshed out in the later books, as I didn't really find out much about her, or I didn't get to know her as well as I did the other characters. So it's just about these unique individuals trying to find the big bads of this book or of this world. And it's told that he was kind of like the right-hand man to the original big bad. And then after there was a war, there was a treaty and a truce was put in place, and they agreed that they wouldn't fight each other or do anything bad against each other. But it turns out that this individual has been secretly breaking the truce and trying to find this artifact to try to bring chaos and destruction, not just to his own magical world, but to the actual real world itself. And he is a really, really powerful sorcerer himself. He is described as having a red right hand, which I thought of as kind of like a skinless hand, which when he points it at someone, he can dissolve someone, they actually evaporate. and he's extremely powerful, even ridiculously strong and powerful. And we find out that there is this kind of past tension between him and Skulduggery, that he was the one responsible for torturing Skulduggery and making him into what he is, which he refers to Skulduggery as a joke, and he kind of plays with Skulduggery as a form of cat and mouse thing. He is the most intimidating boss ever, or villain. I kind of was thinking about Harry Potter in this book, even though this has nothing to do with Harry Potter. It does have that Harry Potter feel, and I was comparing this villain to Voldemort, and Voldemort, in comparison, is a child compared to this villain, which is extremely strong, and he only thinks of himself and what he is doing for him and his own progression. So that is what the story is all about, really. It's just about Skulduggery and Stephanie and Ghastly and Tanith trying to solve what's going on and trying to stop the bad guy and saving the world and all that standard stuff. So in conclusion, this was a really easy read, and it was a really fun read. I didn't anticipate to enjoy this book as much as I did. I was just thinking, okay, I'm going to pick this up, I'm going to read it, I'm going to tell my colleague, okay, that was okay, nothing special, but at least I give it a shot. And yeah, that's all I was thinking about this book. But this was an extremely easy book to read. The characters in it are so good. The relationship between Skulduggery and Stephanie is so good. Yes, it is a funny book. There is loads of humor in this, but it knows when to be funny and when to be serious. And the relationship between Skulduggery and Stephanie is so strong. They feel completely destined to be together, not in a romantic way, but to have found each other. And Skulduggery has an extreme attachment to Stephanie, like a father figure. He feels responsible for her and to protect her at all times. But I really enjoyed this book. It was so much fun to read. It really was. I know that this isn't gonna be for everyone. This isn't literary perfection. This isn't gonna set the world on fire. But this is a good palate cleanser for when I'm reading all these really heavy books and I want to pick up something that's a bit more lighter and going to be really quick to get through, and something I'm going to be really enjoying to read and find out about these characters and about how they progress and how they evolve and all that great stuff. And because this is a series, this leaves on a cliffhanger, well, sort of anyway. You can read this as a standalone, but it's a continuation to the second book, which is called Playing with Fire, which I cannot wait to read. I will try to read this one next month because I really looking forward to continuing on with this series, which I hopefully will be reading all the books. I know there are about 15, so it's going to take me a while, but it's something that is really fun. And if you are interested in fantasy, and if you have read the Dresden Files, I mean, I've only read the first one, so I can't really speak for the whole series. But if you like detective stories, if you like fantasy books, and if you don't mind reading something that's a bit for a younger audience, but has adult themes in it, and stuff that everyone, no matter what your age, everyone's going to enjoy this, then yes, I would highly recommend that you pick this book up. This was so much fun to read. I enjoyed it so much, and I cannot praise this book enough. Also, the author Derek Landy, I believe, is Irish, so this is set in kind of a loose Irish setting and a UK setting, but it doesn't really require you to know everything about Ireland and England. It's just their backdrop and setting. So guys, that's it. Let me know, have you read Skulduggery? Did you like it? What did you think about it? Have I encouraged you to pick it up? I mean, please let me know down below. I'm really interested to actually find out if you guys have actually read this and what you thought about it. I'm not sure whether this is a mainstream book or not. I know that there is a massive fandom on YouTube about it, and this book does have its fans, which I know I'm a bit, and well, not a bit, I'm very late to the game, but I wouldn't say that I'm a massive die-hard fan, as I've only read the first book, but I'm really interested to see where this goes. So as a whole, I'm going to rate the first book, just simply called Skulduggery Pleasant, a 4 stars out of 5. So guys, that's it. That's all I had to say. So with all that out the way, all said and done, have a great day, read some awesome books, and I will see you all in my next video.